Hey everyone, this is Kim O'Neill from the Every Day is a New Day podcast and live show, and you're listening to the Going North podcast with the hilarious Dom Brightman. Be sure to subscribe to his show so you don't miss any episodes, and remember, every day is always a new day.
And today on the Highlight Reel Builder for Authors, known as the Going North podcast, we got one heck of a super special, awesome human for you today again, my friends. I gotta thank my good buddy, Mr. Eminem, Mr. Mickey Mickelson, all the way from the great land of Canada for hooking me up with this awesome author today. Because my goodness, this wonderful gentleman right here, even though he's an Atlanta-based storyteller, he's actually hailing from Lebanon today, the wonderful country of Lebanon, and he is actually the 2017 winner of the Edward Red Liquor Henderson Travel Classics Memorial Scholarship, and he even honed his wonderful craft as a copywriter in Los Angeles and has penned multiple books one of them just titled A Life in Lyrics, a collection of 60 poems from his typewriter, also a typewriter app. He's also created his own app, and he just has a boatload of other victories under his belt, especially a love for both of his parents because his literary skills are probably because of his lovely mom and dad. So let's give it up for a man, the CJ, the CJG himself, the one, the only, Connor Judson Garrett. How you doing today, Connor?
I am great, Dom, and I love that intro. That is, man, you got the voice and you got the enthusiasm, and man, I'm really excited to be on here with you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, indeed, man. It's great having you on too, my man. Like, dude, my man's been getting a lot of wins, man, because my goodness, like, there's like so many things like within your life, man. Because if I'm not mistaken, like, you do a little songwriting on the side as a hobby, and the thing is, like, one of the books you wrote was actually one that you wrote with your dad, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct. Yeah, Spellbound under the Spanish moss. So that was a pretty interesting process. I don't know if you've experienced this, Dom, but with anything you've created or done, but of course, it's always good to have a model to go after. And we were really inspired by a movie called Big Fish. Have you seen it?
Haven't seen Big Fish. I've heard of Big Real Fish, the rock band, but not seen the movie
Okay,
Big Fish.
okay. Well, Big Fish, it was originally produced by Tim Burton, so it's got kind of that dark look to it. But Big Fish was a kind of a father-son story in a way, and it has some interesting moral lessons. It's very whimsical, very funny, but we were inspired by it, so we wanted to write a book kind of in that vein. But it took us years before we sort of really sat down and got serious about it, and that's sort of how that was the seed, I think, that started Spellbound under the Spanish moss. And yeah, that was where it all sort of began.
Oh wow, okay, that's what I'm talking about. Because my goodness, I think you're the first, if my memory serves correctly, to actually penned a book with his dad. Because I've had a grandfather grandson duo. They actually wrote a poetry book. Bernie Siegel, or well, actually, I should say Dr. Bernie Siegel. I need to get that part right. And his grandson, and I think the closest I've had to a father-son duo was actually just I think it was Devin. Heck, I probably need to introduce you to him. He's actually a travel writer, and he wrote a book called Traveling 10,000 Miles with My Dead Father's Ashes, just telling his father's story after he was long gone and traveling with his dad. So this is like a rare occasion, man. Like, it's a wonderful novelty, and a great novelty at that.
Wow, I was like, yeah, I mean, even what you just told me, that what was the last book called?
Yeah, so that book, if I'm getting it right, it was 10,000 Miles with My Dead Father's Ashes.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that it is particularly rare. I think especially in fiction, not only like a father son duo, but I think even just having people collaborating on fiction. Nonfiction is a little bit more common, but I think just because of sort of it's really hard, I think, to be on the same page with a co-author in fiction, right? because the events obviously in nonfiction were already there, they're already real, but you sort of have to be on the same exact page if you're going to do a fiction book. And that's, again, that's very, very difficult with two people. So um, that was a very unique process as well. And we made sure to be on, WhatsApp calls and using Google Docs every single day. And the book, we actually took about maybe 2 months to outline it. But once we got to writing, it took us about 3 weeks to write it. We were writing thousands of words each day. And really, the momentum, I think, played a large part in how the book was written, in the flow of it. Because I think you'll notice that really one page just kind of tumbles right into the other. And even as you read it, there's a momentum. Like most people that read it end up kind of being so addicted to it as they go through that they really do read it in about, the first day that they start to open it up. So
Oh man, yeah, man. Because you're so right about that. Because fiction, that's a different ball game just by yourself alone, just from the outside looking in. I'm like nonfiction, like it's easy, but it's not easy because it's like because of course you have a team of folks for the final product, like an editor and book cover designer. But like fiction, like it's totally different. Like there's characters, there's a plot, there's a story. Like you gotta make sure you get the peaks and valleys and making sure it all flows together, and that's just all in one head, but two heads. They say they're better than one, but my goodness, how was that process with all the Google Docs and the WhatsApp calls, just handling that whole process? Was because it sounds like you two have a great relationship going to be able to do that together.
yeah, it was definitely I think it would have maybe been a more challenging process, but again, thankfully we had really kind of some modern tools to use. But our big thing was we always try to make sure that the best idea won. So we would debate, we would discuss, we would try to think about. We were really big on the character psychology. Would this character actually do this? Would they actually behave that sort of way? And we sort of played different roles in the book. I relied on my dad heavily on plot. He relied on me heavily on the actual writing and a lot of the lyricism and everything like that. But yeah, I think the really critical part was that the best idea always had to win. We were really about making the best book that we could write. It didn't really matter who came up with what or who said what. It was just we really got in sync about the final product, the final book. That was and that was the other thing so what surprised me most was the feeling of ownership. My hesitation on collaborating on fiction was that I felt like it would be less satisfying. Like it would feel as if, okay, we didn't really do this, or I didn't really create this, but actually, we were both so confident in our parts of it that it didn't take away from how we felt, the amount of ownership we felt individually over this kind of collective project, you know? So that was really surprising and special.
Oh yeah, I could definitely say that again indeed. Definitely could say that again indeed. So my goodness, backtracking a bit, seems like you got this talent for writing, man. So how'd you discover it? Was it your mom or was it your dad that helped you to find that talent? Or did they just beat it into you? It's like, yeah, Connor's gonna grow up to be an award-winning writer, and he's gonna become a New York Times bestseller and make sure that we retire millionaires, darn it. He's gonna be our meal ticket. Like, how did it all begin for you, my man?
Well, it's funny because I think that I had always wanted to write, but I felt like it was sort of out of my grasp actually for most of my life. And then I think, ironically, my path was very different from my mom. She was always kind of more into nonfiction biographies, and um, I was really fascinated by fiction and fantasy specifically originally. And Lord of the Rings was a huge inspiration, and I think I always dreamed of writing something like that. And then it got to a point where I didn't worry so much about whether or not I was going to be good or bad at it. It just got to a point where I had to do it. It was a compulsion. I think that if you're going to try to be a writer, you're going to write, you shouldn't do it as a hobby. It should be because you feel like it's the only thing that you want to do, and you're obsessed with it. And so it got to that point where even though I didn't particularly feel like I had very much skill at it at first and for a long time, I felt like I had to do it. I felt that level of passion, and there were certain key messages that I was trying to get out and convey that I think I wasn't going to stop until I felt like I got them done. And then, of course, you mature, you get older, and the messages change. And I think that's the key, is you have to sort of, if you're going to make a career out of it, you have to keep finding new things that you value and that you want to say, and you have to keep exploring your philosophy. And I think it's good because it also prevents you from stagnating as well.
Amen to that. Amen to that. 'Cause stagnation, that's where the evilness happens. Yes, indeed. That's where the devil finds his way. It's like, they stagnating. Down to put the finishing blow. More distractions. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's right.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yes, indeed. And just a quick plug for the folks listening, like my man Connor's the gold medalist, y'all, because a man's up. It's 2 a.m. where my man's recording. This time of the records, just got to give the man a shout out for that one, man. I'm telling you, the gold medal interviewee today, baby. That's right. This guy right here. That's right. And yes, ladies, he already taken. Sorry, just letting you know. Because they're going to go to that website and be like, oh my gosh, hello. It's like, oh, I'm going to slide into his DMs. He travel right about to travel to me. Nah, he's already spoken for. Just want to throw that in there to protect you.
Well, thank you. Thanks for the protection.
Oh, man. Oh, man. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Keeping in the family and discovering some wonderful gifts and talents and always wanting to do it. So, my goodness. And also, if I'm not mistaken, your mom's love for biographies and nonfiction actually led to her starting her publishing company, right?
Yeah, so that was actually sort of a funny thing. So my granddad had owned a record label in Nashville a fairly long time ago at this point. It was called House of Gold. And my mom, kind of from seeing that, was a bit weary of me starting a publishing company, because she was concerned that ultimately it might take away from the writing, because she said you end up running a lot of the business side of it, and then it can take away from sort of that creative half. But I didn't listen, thankfully. And and then my mom, after a little while of kind of working on it, my mom joined up, and she's ended up revolutionizing, galvanizing the company, and has really, really, really made it her own with me. And it's been a blast. In the same way that my dad and I collaborated, my mom and I have been collaborating and working on everything together. She's my business partner, and it's been a blast. We're especially working with talented, a lot of times under-recognized authors, who are just, all of our authors write brilliantly and have great stories. And that's what we kind of look to publish. We're not really restricted to a particular genre. We just sort of publish the types of stories that we believe the world needs, So that's a little bit about what we're doing. And it's Lucid House Publishing. And I think what I like is that my mom and I are very different. I come from also a mix of a little bit of a digital marketing background. I've worked for ZipRecruiter as an SEO specialist, and one of my current roles, I have a few current roles, but one of my jobs is as a content writer and content strategist for Snack Nation. And we have a few other sites with them. We have like Love with Food. We have Karoo, which is sort of their, another brand there that they have within their umbrella. And then my full-time job is as a content strategist for a company called Thrive, which is a product development and innovation firm. So coming from sort of a digital marketing background, I'm looking at, things like how do we rank for certain keywords and things like that. Whereas my mom, she's been doing a lot of our more recent book acquisitions, and she just has, frankly, she has a lot more experience. And so she's looking at things like foreign rights and just things that I think would take, if you were starting something from scratch and had no experience, would maybe take a long time to kind of figure out where the next steps are. So I think that's been also really nice. So that's a little bit about what we're doing.
Amen. That's right. Keep it in the family, y'all. That's what I'm talking about. Indeed. That's right. Tapping into that experience of the wonderful elders, y'all. That's right. That's right, indeed. When they say respect your elders, they really mean it, y'all, especially those elders who really have the tenacity and the wisdom to match, y'all. I'm telling you, when you combine the wisdom of the elders with the wonderful energy of the youth and they listen, you can create all sorts of wonderful, amazing things.
I agree, man. And I gotta say, by the way, I know we're in podcast still, but dude, your voice, it's so like rich, man. I bet you're obviously they're listening right now, but I bet your listeners love that. So I see why you got this podcast, man. It fits you well.
Thanks so much, man. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. That's the name of the game. It's like, hey, I could do a podcast where it's just me rambling every week, but hey, that wouldn't be as fun as inviting other authors on, sharing the wealth, and helping to get their voices out there too. Because it's like, hey, there's enough pie in the world for everybody. That's right. It could be pecan pie, could be peach pie, maybe sweet potato pie.
I like
That's
it.
right.
Little pumpkin pie during fall. I'm with it.
There you go. That's right. The pumpkin pie, indeed. There you go. That's right. A little pumpkin spice latte for the folks who go crazy over pumpkin for no reason. That's right. Yes, indeed. But it's not about lattes, it's about the living, soon to be legend counter. So, my goodness, man. So, any advice for those looking to go into the world of writing their own fiction? Because, my goodness, you produce so much content for so many genres of the travel writing and what you do with the day job and the SEO and combining it with fiction, man. So, being able to be well versed in those different genres, any advice for the aspiring fiction writer out there?
Yeah, I think a few. I think number one, if you're writing books, write the book that you want to read, and write with passion. Um, don't don't worry about commercialization on your first draft, and always keep the writing process separate from the editing process. Be self-critical and be critical of your work, but understand that you know you're only going to be able to have even a full critiquing of your own work if you have a complete work, because you have to get used to just finishing, especially for younger writers. Work on finishing, okay? Because it's very easy to get to the point where you have 10 half finished novels in the drawer, or on your computer, and that does you no good, because then you're not even able to explore your own pacing, and you're not even able to kind of really see well, and then also to that point, it's like, okay, if you find that you have 10 unfinished novels, what part of the story are you getting caught up in, and why, and what are your mental patterns, right? And I would also just say, don't be discouraged, because you're probably, if you're honest with yourself, you're probably going to start off being not very good. And if you are a prodigy, then that's great. But if you're not a prodigy, don't be upset about it. Do it because you love it. Fall in love with your process. Create a process that works for you, and also create a process that works around your personality and whatever challenges you may have. Like for me, I have a pretty severe case of ADHD, so I've had to build a writing process that kind of works around my ADHD and is designed to give me momentum. That's again why I don't write and edit at the same time, because then I would get caught up and I'd end up splintering off in projects and going in all these different directions. So I outline thoroughly, scene by scene, before I ever start. I have pages of notes about each character, about the settings, just about all sorts of things. And I sort of treat it as a big puzzle, and I get to paint with words that way. So I'm not having to stop and break my flow a ton as I'm going, because I've already done such a thorough job outlining it. So that's some of what I'd say. What else for aspiring writers? I would also say, just don't be afraid to fail, and also don't necessarily always measure your quote unquote success by how many books you sell at first, because the reality is it's difficult to sell books. The average book sells about $2,000 worth in its whole lifetime. That's not enough for a sustained income or a living or anything like that. And so you got to understand that most books on the market really aren't crushing it. So your first measure is just frankly, it has to be an internal one. You need to start off with, is this a book that I'm proud of? Does this first of all say what I wanted to say, right? And then you can go and get to different levels and degrees of critical as you go through. And then also just always look to be better. Never, again, we talked about stagnation earlier, but never stagnate. Another thing you can also do is change mediums. Like don't stay and change genre. Don't stay in one genre, because you'll learn something. For instance, if I go from writing poetry to prose, the different skills I'm working on and the lessons that I take away from it are completely different, right? So it's really important to challenge yourself in that way as well, because I'm gonna learn, how to paint with words better when I'm working in poetry. But I may learn more about, plotting and pacing and character development if I'm working in prose. And I'd say that's the final and probably the most important thing is always keep your characters first. It's tempting when you're writing fantasy, for example, and same with sci-fi, to explore the setting first and foremost and think that, okay, you're going to drop your characters in there. But the problem is they often become accessories to this beautiful and elaborate world you have. You need to start with the characters and let the characters serve as sort of a reflection of the world around them. And as they go and as they travel, you'll be visualizing the setting around them anyways. But you have to have multi-dimensional characters. You never want to get caught with flat characters, because your story will then fall flat. It's pretty much guaranteed. So I know I kind of jumped around a bit, but those are some key pieces of advice I would give to start off.
Woohoo! And there you have books. A man's dropping jewels, baby. You gonna have a tennis bracelet of wisdom from this guy right here. I'm telling you, y'all. That's right, all them jewels, baby. Indeed. That's right, keeping the separate outlines of pages for different characters if you're writing that novel. That's right, and focusing on the craft too. And you're definitely right about the selling piece. Like, that's the thing about books, is the fact that folks need to realize, like, hey, everybody and their mom literally is writing a book, or they're going to be contributing their story to a book. And it's like, hey, you got to focus on your why here and not think that your book is going to be the end all be all. It's like, yep, I write this book. Oprah's going to come out of retirement and sit down with me and be on TV. It's like, yeah, then I get to kick back and relax off of royalties forever. Like, nah, it ain't like that. You got to do the work. The real work begins after you're definitely done with the novel in terms of publishing it and putting yourself out there. So, solid advice, my man. Rock solid.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, indeed. Yes, sir, indeed. So, my goodness. So, in addition to poetry and prose, and you also do travel writing and traveling. So, my goodness, man. So, I know you're in Lebanon right now, and it's a little bit on the, I guess, I say different side. It might not be too awkward for you since you've been there before, but maybe not as much during the summer seasons. There going to be another country in particular that you plan on nesting in for a bit in your travel, since you love to write about travel as well?
Yeah. So, I'm not sure if we're going to end up kind of long-term staying in any other countries before we head back to the US, but I'm pretty eager to go to Jordan. I want to explore around Petra a bit. And would love to, swim in the Dead Sea and see the Jordan River. I'm not religious, but I've read the Bible and studied it pretty extensively. So I am curious to sort of just see what it's like in real life. Some of the spots that are mentioned in the Bible, kind of travel in the footsteps of some of the biblical history. So Jordan's pretty high on the list. Went to Istanbul while I was over here already, but I would definitely go back to Turkey. But Jordan's the number one spot within the Middle East that I want to go to. We're definitely going to go to Cyprus for sure. And there's some interesting history over in Cyprus. Obviously, of course, there's a lot of beach and a lot of just, regular sunny sort of vacation life as well. So we will be doing some of that. Let's see, where else? It's funny, the Middle East, man, there's a lot of countries that they have their struggles, but there's some very surprising scenery and some awesome history too. So I won't be going there, but I would love to see Iran, but will not be going there on this trip. Would also love to see parts of Yemen as well. But yeah, but I think the most two realistic countries, well, three, within the Middle East first are Jordan, Cyprus, and then Egypt. I want to go towards Luxor as well. Cairo, I've read about and I've kind of looked up enough to know it's maybe not the place we want to go right now, but Luxor would be pretty good. And then and then outside of that, we also do want to try to, before we end up heading back over, hit up some spots in Europe. Like we want to try to hit up to Greece, Italy, Spain if we're lucky enough and able to before we head back. Partly because there's a ton of history there, and just a lot to see. So and that's what we're trying to figure out is like we think that if we travel enough, we'll kind of get an idea of where we'd like to be long term. Because if you'd asked me a year ago or 2 years ago if I saw myself settling down in a place and thinking about long term building, I would have had a harder time imagining that because I like to float around a bit, but given now that I've sort of I've got a fiance and kids and everything, I've had to really, really shift my thinking and start to think about, okay, we can still travel, we can still do all these things, we can still create and grow and explore. But having a base is not a bad thing, so.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. Definitely got to have that base indeed. That's right. And not the trouble, too, either. That's right. Got to have that base indeed. Yes, indeed. My goodness, definitely some interesting stuff. And I'm pretty sure you're right about the Middle East. Like, if it wasn't for all that darn conflict going on in that area, it would be one heck of a great set of countries to visit in that area, I imagine. Because there's probably a whole lots of beautiful scenery
Yeah.
in that area that would be great tourist attractions. And if folks could just really get past the differences, and we could definitely have a better planet in a way we'd be
Yeah.
able to see more great stuff on it, because there's a lot of great stuff that's hidden that the media likes to hide from people. That it's like, if you actually go there, it's like, oh, wow, so they've been hiding this from us, huh? You mean to tell me they ain't no starving kids here, and they ain't a bunch of slavery and whatnot? It's like, yeah, I mean, that stuff's going on, but not here. It's like, oh, wow, all right. Try to scare the people.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of these historical sites, I mean, they're just stunning. That is one thing I've been surprised about is that I guess maybe because I'm American, right? Maybe this is why, but in America, I feel like because we're a relatively young country, I don't know if you feel this way, but if we go somewhere else, I mean, I find myself, I'm very awestruck by just the age of things, right? Like if when we went to Istanbul, seeing Hagia Sophia, just the age of things as we're looking at them, it's like, oh, this is from the 1200s. This is from, you know, BCE period, right? Looking at this stuff, it just like I look at the Phoenician ruins over here, and there's a place in Byblos, right? I was able to find this underground place and find this massive sarcophagus, and that's I've just noticed that there's sort of not a lack of preservation, but these historical sites I feel like aren't valued enough here. Like to me, they should be. People should be so excited and so proud and so passionate about these places, but there are plenty of ancient castles and things even here in Lebanon that I found that people that have lived here their whole lives don't even know about. So as an example, there's a castle in Byblos called Smar Jebel up towards kind of the more mountainous area, and it's up in a village and people don't even know about it, but you go and it's absolutely stunning. But again, maybe because it's not the most large scale or whatever, but I mean it's a really stunning place. And so yeah, I think they're not necessarily as proud of their historical sites as you'd imagine. So that's been interesting to see, because I think there's a huge touristic opportunity for a lot of these countries if they wanted that, especially countries like Lebanon that are really struggling economically. I guess maybe it's a little bit of a problem because obviously it takes money to, to refurbish and keep these places sort of well preserved and maintained. But again, I think if they marketed some of their these historical sites more, I think they could open up their tourism even more. I mean, these places are they're stunning, they're breathtaking, you know.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm talking about indeed. That's what I'm talking about indeed. That's right. So be sure to talk to Con if you're interested in traveling in the coming years. That's right. Hopefully, when things are less stupid, for lack of a better word. Hopefully, less stupid. My goodness. So, since this is far from your first rodeo, is there a question that you wish you'd be asked more often when you're on the metaphorical hot seat of the podcasting world?
Well, I'm glad you asked about one question I'm glad you asked was you're asking, advice for up and coming authors, because I think that's really important. I think I would love to help people that want to write and are unsure about it, because a lot of times I believe that some of the best writers out there are probably the very ones that doubt themselves. I think people that tend to be super super confident all the time in everything they do, a lot of times you'll find in life that same confidence prevents them from having a critical eye, and so they're not really able to fully optimize their skills. Whereas someone that has a little bit of self-doubt pushes the boundaries of their creativity, because they expect better and better of themselves. So I guess another thing I'd say is, that especially if you're a younger author, don't worry about, what your professors say or, your external, because for instance, in academia, you're taught to write without opinions and for it to be sort of inane and to be toothless with how you write. And that's not really what you're paid to write in real life. Like in the real world, you get paid for your opinions and you get paid for having some passion and you get paid for, um, yeah, just for having some fire. And so keep that, and protect that. Again, do be critical enough to look yourself in the mirror and to create a foundation for your writing, but find your voice, what I mean? Challenge yourself in that way. So that's some of what I'd say. I think besides that, I'm, excited to share that Spellbound, we are almost done with the second book completely, which is Fragrance of a Shadow. And it's set down in San Juan, Puerto Rico. And it kind of continues with some of the same characters from book one. And we're a little bit of the way into book three as well. But both of them, I think book two will probably end up releasing sometime maybe like fall of next year. We're going to kind of make sure that we've got this one as close to perfect as we can, and that we have an idea of fully what's going to happen in book three. So this way we can tie them together properly.
Yeah, sounds good right there. Sounds good right there. That's right. Book three is going to be amazing, y'all. Definitely pick it up and pick up the other two books as well. And if you have that fire and you got your voice protected, that's right, protected. Stonewall that mess. Like, put all the steel, all the bricks, that's right, all the mortar, all of it. Put a big old wall, protect that fire. Because as soon as you keep it going and throw some gasoline on it, it'll be great. I'm telling you, y'all. I'm telling you. Definitely be great, because that's definitely advice that anyone, especially when they're in the younger years, needs to hear, because life will hit you. And it'll hit you hard, too. And it'll make you want to let your fire just go on out. And then it's like, haha, we got him. We got the water on him. The fire's out. Now he's part of the system. He's now a cog in the machine. Like, hey, don't let that happen to you. Keep that fire alive. Keep it alive and burning right indeed. So, speaking of youth, we're coming down to the magical question that every guest gets to receive. And that is, if you're to wake up tomorrow and you're 25 again, but this time in the current year of 2021 with all of your knowledge and experience, what advice would you give to yourself?
Mm. Work aggressively, but be patient would be one of those bits of advice I would say. And patient aggression, right? So it's very easy to, I think, to jump into the wrong things if you're impatient. But I think that patience allows us to stay grounded. And I would also say just keep a good perspective on the long term as you're working on the short term stuff. So I tend to be very future oriented. Some people tend to be kind of more nearsighted, and then some people are completely myopic, right? Or they'll look just at right now. And but I tend to drift to be more future oriented, more in a dream world. And I think that it's important to kind of have a good blend of both. I think that's really, really critical. And yeah, and just to work on the all things in parallel, right? So I think that is one thing that I feel like I have done right, is I think I've worked on everything in parallel so that I can get, short-term results, because the short term will allow the bigger dreams to be funded and to continue in the way that they need to continue. But I think the other thing that I would say is just continue to be kind to yourself, because of course you're not going to be perfect, but I do believe that as long as you're trying and your intentions are right, you're going to find your way. And so don't be critical, but don't be, there's a line that you need to have even with yourself. Don't go past that point where you're becoming self-defeating, right? You need to be kind to yourself. You need to trust that, if you're patient and you're working hard and you're focused and you're continuing to hunt down the answers, you'll find them. You will find those answers, and it'll be the most rewarding thing in the world each time you end up, I guess anytime some sort of truth comes to light. So that's something that I would say. What else for a 25-year-old me? That's just a few years ago. I think cherish every moment as well. I've tried to be sure to do that. Value your freedom, as in appreciate the little things. Like if you're in a setting where you're lucky enough to be able to walk by the beach or something, enjoy those moments, because and just always realize how lucky you are, and how, if when you have it good, always recognize that, because the more that you recognize sort of your blessings or the good in your life, the more that it protects those things, and the more that it's like I believe that basically gratitude sort of begets more blessings. Whereas I think that if you're and subsequently it turns each moment into a blessing that way. The other thing I would say is also, be gentle to yourself if you're not a machine, right? Because of course you're not going to be a machine. So on those days where, you're not able to perform at 100% capacity or 100%, you're basically being your best self, be kind to yourself about that too, because you are human at the end of the day. I think that's one thing that is one thing I would do a little differently, is I would probably, well, I'm glad I've been hard on myself, but I think that I would, for other people, I think I wouldn't want them to be as hard on themselves as I have been on me, if that makes sense. So that's some of it.
Oh, yeah, let's stop talking about. Dude, that's right, that PA. That's right, that patient aggression. That's right. That's right, aggressively charge for, but be patient in the process, indeed. That's right, indeed. That's what I'm right talking about right there. It's so darn true. It's like, hey, Amazon Prime style, we want it all right now. Microwave, you want it now, but thing is, it all ain't supposed to happen right now. Sometimes you gotta, sadly, but assuredly, we gotta wait, so that way something better will come out of it in the process. So, yeah, man. That's right. That's right. It's been dropping them rock solid jewels and gems of wisdom, y'all. I'm telling you. That's right. That's right. We all know that G in Garrett stands for gems, baby. That's what I'm talking about. Yes, indeed. He's got them. Yes, indeed. So for those who want to pick up some more gems via your magical books, the ones that you have out now, the ones that you're going to be writing in the future, what's the best way to pick those up and keep up with all that you're doing?
Yeah, so Amazon is a good route. You can look up Connor Judson Garrett. You can check out Goodreads as well, again under the same name. But Falling Up in the City of Angels, if you like nonfiction with kind of I had to change some names around this way it would be a little more appropriate. But Falling Up in the City of Angels is based on Life in Los Angeles. You could look up Spellbound Under the Spanish Moss, which was the fantasy book. For my poetry, you could look up past books I've done, Become the Fool, Life and Lyrics. But I think for poetry, I like to believe my best stuff is coming out in this next book. So I'd almost rather people hold off and wait, because we evolve, right? Then my publishing company is lucidhousepublishing.com. That's a way of seeing not only my books, but also our different authors who we're very proud of. So those would be some good ways to kind of check out what we're doing. And then also I have an Instagram, which is at Connor Judson Garrett.
Woohoo! That's my homie CJ, baby. The CJG, baby. That's right. That's right. We're going to put all that wonderful good stuff in the show notes. Check it out like a library book. Check it out like 75 library books. Be on the lookout for that upcoming book. I'm telling y'all. That's right. He's going to get that poetry in there, y'all. That's right. Might even be hotter than fish grease, y'all. Pick it up. That's right. Check it out. It'll be good stuff. And keep up all the stuff that he's doing.
I like that.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. It's never been the same since I started saying that one. Folks be caught off guard with that. Like, what? Like, you know what? He's on us. Oh, man. Well, any parting words before we close up shop, my man?
I think the parting words would just be, thank you for having me. Thank you for, for all the questions and just for what you do, and for having such a cool voice for this podcast.
This is your host, Dom Brightman. Hope you enjoyed what you just heard. And if you really did, do me a solid and leave a review if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, on YouTube, wherever you're listening to. And subscribe to hear more, because more is coming your way to advance you further than before.